Hi everybody, I hope you'll be alright. So today I'm gonna to talk about JWT and why should you use JWT. So about myself, I'm a cybersecurity researcher. I used to work for CISPA and University of Potsdam. I have a PhD degree in software security. Here is my personal website and my email, so please feel free if you have any question, just ping me and don't worry about anything. So before I get started and basically break down JWT, I would like you think about the concepts of or the distinction between authentication and authorization. So basically, I try to illustrate that by example. Authentication is like a login form. For example, when you use your online banking or you try to sign in your mailbox and various services, you basically firstly perform authentication. You send your username, password, email password, whatsoever you have to a server, and in order to get authenticated. And afterwards, you go to some pages such as dashboard or various type of services. And in those pages, you don't need to log in again. You don't need, for example, when you want to send an email, you want to remove an email, you want to save something, you want to transfer money in your dashboard, your admin page. You don't need to each and every time log in and sign in again. So how it happens? This is happened through authorization. Authorization means basically checking your credential, making sure that you are the same person who have already successfully signed in the system. Otherwise, everybody, like a malicious user, like an attacker, can basically just enter that address in the URL and go straightforwardly to, for example, inbox without doing authentication. That's why we have authorization. And JWT is designed for authorization. So this is important, you should know that. So this is not basically for authentication. So today I'm gonna show you how to use how basically JWT works and its advantage in comparison to the traditional approach, which is cookie based authorization. I basically break down the main structure of a JWT token, and then we write a simple node app that generates some tokens, and finally we talk about the home project, something that you can mess around with that and basically design. So as I said earlier, JWT token, which stands for JSON Web Tokens, is an alternative, is a modern approach for classical cookie session based technique. So in classical approach, which is actually the majority of the websites even these days, you have, for example, you use a web browser in order to log into some services. I would say again, like a banking service, online banking service, like your PayPal, something like that. And then after giving a username, password, server try to check its basically correctness with its own database to make sure this username password is valid. And when these are basically valid, when server can validate you, save and generate basically a kind of unique code, which is called like session or cookie session, something like that. Give back you a unique code and save a copy of that on its own memory, right? And then your browser basically for each request thereafter, for example, like going to dashboard, to sending emails, transferring money, receiving money, whatsoever, you don't need to authenticate again. Instead, your browser, the client browser, basically send this token. This basically is not a token, this code, this unique code, which is called session, to the server. And each time server match this with its own copy on the memory and make sure you are an authenticated, you're a verified person. And this is how it works. So JWT is an alternative approach for that. But before actually I break down the distinction, I would like to basically engage you with the issues in this traditional authorization system. So as you perhaps noticed that, server has to hold a copy of the session on its own memory. So just imagine in some cases, you have 1 million or a huge number of a substantial number of users try to use services, online services. Just imagine, this story that there is like a Black Friday, and everybody rushing to buying something. So in order to buy something from a website like Amazon, they got to log into their servers, to the online banking, transfer some money, doing some stuff like that. So server in this case has to hold about 1 million or even more session at the runtime, and which each request you send to the server, for example, you want to transfer money, you want to get a report about your account, something like that, you got to send your browser basically automatically send this session code to the server, and server has to match this basically session with its own ID. Not only match, in many cases it has to basically record that somewhere on the database as a temporary session, and basically fetch your information, for example your account balance and the other information, and allow you, for example, based on that, to go to different services, right? So that actually impose substantial overhead to the server. This is one of that. It sometimes, that's why sometimes you see they take down the server sometimes, and these type of events, New Year, holidays, and you want to shop something, and Black Friday is similar things. I'm just giving you an example for the sake of illustration. You would say there are so many slowness, server is down, there are some issues or something like that, many conflicts. So this is because of this traditional approach. And also it imposes a lot of hard work for you as a developer. You got to basically think about it and implement it. There is also another issue here. So you can even think about it, pause the video and think about the other issue. What I would tell you now, but you can actually stop the video and think about that just to engage yourself. The second issue, or the other issue, is here, for example, if you have a couple of servers, real world scenarios, we don't have just one server, come on. For example, if you use like a PayPal or use like Amazon or something like that, they have multiple servers, clusters across the globe, right? In different countries, different part of city, different part of country. For example, just giving you again, like online banking service. Imagine you are working as developer for a bank, for the IT section, right? So in this case, you got to, you have multiple servers. One server, just imagine a simple case. One server is for like typical, balance reports, something like that. The other server is for investments. For example, you want to invest some money. Another server is for retirement operations and other things. So you can't just really, when you log into online banking, you see, when you go to retirement section, when you go to credit card, you go to different parts, you don't need to authenticate each time. But behind the scene, these are different servers. They are even located in different part of country, a different part of world, right? So in this case, when you use this traditional authorization, this cookie session-based type of authorization, the servers have a problem, because as I mentioned earlier, the server has to basically have a copy of the session that they have already generated for you, right? So they need to have one copy of that on their memory to find a match and allow you to basically further on and use the further services, right? So when there is no such a match, when there is no such a copy, how they want to find that? So when there are multiple servers, the other servers, they don't have this copy on their memory, right? Just one server has that. So what would happen? Then there are a lot of work for you as developer to sync them, to somehow find a way to basically give this copy to the other servers. That's why one of the approaches is to save that on a database, on a central database. And then later on, when session get expired, you have to update that record and remove that session, or announce that this is expired, or setting some issue time and expire time, this sort of thing. So as it sounds, there are a lot of work, there are many conflicts here, and this is a source of problem. So JWT, which stands for JSON Web Token, and is like a JSON packet. is a token, is a modern approach, and when you sign in, as you can see here, the procedure pretty much is similar, you know and on the left side you see the traditional approach, on the right side you see this JWT token based approach. So the structure is similar, so there is no such a big deal here. But the fact is, this time server does not hold a copy of the session on its own memory. How it's possible? Because this time the sendback generated JWT to the client, to the browser, contains the necessary information. That's why each time your browser sends this token back to the server in order to use different services after the login page, server doesn't need to really go and find a match on its own memory, and this type of configuration, because everything is within the token. So your username, the necessary information is inside. Therefore, it doesn't need to do anything. And this token is in the format of JSON format. And next step, actually, I'm going to break down and tell you what's going on here. So it has multiple, advantage. One of advantage is basically it reduced the amount of memory we need on the server. So it reduced our resources, which is very good. You can handle millions users with actually a cheaper server instead of expensive server. You have less slowdown or security issues, memory drain because of the rush of users, because you don't need to hold a copy of the sessions on its memory, right? It's very simple. Another advantage is when you have multiple servers, in real world scenarios, the other servers do not need to sync anything with the the first server. Why? Because they just receive the token, and based on token they can understand who you are, right? So it's very simple and easy. So this is the whole point. As you see, the solution actually seems very simple, but it's very effective, right? So in order to save something, because now you might think, okay, if token contains all necessary information, so somebody maybe steal the token or manipulate the token and change the information. For example, say for the account balance things, they change the balance. Person has $1, say I have $10,000, I have $1,000,000. You can change it in the token because other servers recognize you based on token. They can change the username and the other information, right? But the fact here is we use a strong encryption token, so they are not that much simple, so it's not easy to crack that. There are some ways, perhaps in another video I'm going to walk through that and explain you how we can actually hack this. But in normal situation, if we take everything into consideration, you probably should not have any problem. So now I'm going to show you a different part of a JWT token, and we are going to mess around with that. Okay guys, if you just surf this address jwt.io, you will find a lot of actually beneficial resources, and if you a little bit drill down, you would see something like this. Then you can actually online manipulate and play with a token here. So JWT token, essentially, the left side is encoded version. This is what you see on your browser, and this is what would be basically sent and move between client and server, because it has to be encoded. On the right side you can see the decoded, the real thing. So it contains 3 sections. The first section is header, and it's basically specify the type of algorithm. Here by default we use HS256, which is a very strong one, and it's hard to crack that. And the second part identify the type of the token, which is a JWT token, right? So as you can see, the equivalent is the red part here. For example, if you manipulate something, you can see the encoded one would be changed, right? So the second part, which is important, and you as a developer would really struggle with that, and you need to play with that, is the payload. Is the data that you expect to receive from user and read that on the token. For example, in online banking, for example, you want to know the owner, the name, I don't know, password, you want to see the amount of money, for example, and the other things. And of course, you got to be sure that user could not manipulate that, could not impersonate herself with someone else. So here, this is the issued time, the time that is generated, which is very important. And you also, I would suggest you to always add like expired time, something like that, because you don't want to have a session that never expired, a token never expired, because if somebody steals this token for any reason, he can forever actually access to the server, right? This is not good. And in order to prevent that, you need to have like expiry time, say 1 hour or something. The format here is like Unix timestamp, so we can easily change the day to Unix timestamp. Yeah, so here is the part, and the final part is verify signature. As I told you, we got to make sure that nobody can impersonate, cannot manipulate the package, this token, and perform impersonation attack. So we have like header, payload, and then we have a secret code, I would say secret token, secret access token, and here it has to be very secure. You need to find something very long and unique between these servers, and something shared between servers, and just server has this information, not clear. Because if clients or any attacker basically can steal this secret, they can understand, find that, then they can basically reconstruct this token and change the information here, reconstruct that, and perform a hack. So this is important. You need to actually hold it in long term. So you might say, okay, when we have this package, so it's easy to change this information. If you see, if you change anything here, it would be invalid because of the whole structure here. This structure verify this is like a CRC code, I would say. So if you change something, it change the code, the CRC code, and the server side would understand this is not a valid token, right? So yeah, this is in this part. I just break down this. You can go here and can play more with that. In the next part, I'm gonna to basically implement a small piece of code in Node and Express to show you how you can basically work with JWT. How you can import that in your project. Okay guys, now let us start to write our code. In order to write the program, I use Visual Studio Code, which is a free IDE. Actually, it's very nice and dandy, but you're not limited to that, so you can do your own thing and write use other basically IDEs, or even using a notepad. So you got to install Node.js on your system, and when you do that, then you go here, the terminal, and say npm, basically initiate a new project with switch Y that says you want to create a new project with basically all default settings. So now there we go, we have the file here. Now we need to install Express. So npm I, which stands for install. Then we want to have Express for our API things, and we need to have JSON WEB TOKEN, and I also need to install some other stuff I'm gonna tell you later. So because I don't want to, each time I write a piece of code and save that, I don't want to, when I basically change something, I don't like to restart the server. I want to do this, I want somehow, it happens automatically. To do that, I install Nodemon. Right. With this command, I install this package here, or this library over here. I'm gonna show you how you can use that. So, and as I told you before, it's important to keep the secret key of the server-side secret key hiddenly in some file. So in order to do that, we want to save that on like environment file. I create this file and I call x secret key, and then I want to define some keys here, and I want to import that in my own project. So to do that, I install .env. Alright, so to use Nodemon properly, I need to add this statement, dev start, sorry. So I would define like that because I want to address Nodemon. I would say Nodemon, my main file. So I would say my main file is like server.js, and in the package it says server.js, and add the comma here, save the file, so everything should be fine. Okay, so in the first stage, we need to basically import the libraries, necessary libraries, const express. I would import that with require and say express I need, and then I need also JWT, so I would say JSON WEB TOKEN. And apart from that, I need to import this environment file, content of that. So I would say require dot env and config. All right. So then I would be able to, for the rest of my code, to import this secret key inside of the project for the configuration. So because we are dealing with JSON request, JSON basically token, so I said that I set my application to use express. This is a express application. Then I say app should use express JSON like this. Okay. So, and so now we want to make sure that everything works fine, and but before that, let's set also the server port, because we want our application listen to its port. So I would say 4050. So you got to be sure that this port is already free and is not occupied by another services. So let's see, does it work or not? So this is how basically you can run Nodemon on your project. Okay, it seems to be fine. So for example, if I change the port later, I don't need to reset the server. As as soon as save the file, as soon as I save the file, basically automatically Nodemon reset server on this server JS file. So okay, this is fine. It seems everything is okay. Now we need to add a route to just be sure everything works properly. I would say if I receive a GET request with a route which is called, for example, say news, something like this, then, or instead of news, maybe something better, like just say users. Yeah, for example, users. Of course, I receive a pair of requests and responses, and then I want to define some code for that. And if something happened, I want to respond something back to the client, some JSON format, and I would say users, something like this. So now I need to basically specify, I need to declare users. What is users here? I would say define users like an array. I would say this is an array and it contains some JSON information. So giving some indent, make it more readable. I would say, okay, so what should have? We said accounts. We said username. Yeah. I need to know our user email. And then I give my own email, for example, here. gmail.com. And then I give some, what would I say? I would say balance, for example. Something like this. I would say, let's say 5,000. Something like that. So I want to have multiple users, so I just copy paste that here. Then I say test. Say like this, and I say test 2, and I say 0. Right. Okay, so okay, let's be sure everything works fine. So for testing this service, you can either use Postman, or actually you are free to use multiple services, so multiple tools, but one of tools I would recommend you is like an extension here, which is called REST client. Actually, it's really easy to use, so I have already installed that here. I would go here and create like a requests file, just test my service, and I would try to send GET request to just make sure everything is okay. Has the port, and we had something like users, if I'm right. Okay, let's see, does it work? Send the request, yeah, there we go, everything works fine. We got this response from the server, and we have JSON information here. So the next part is we wanna basically generate a token. You know, we want to make some JWT token and see how we can use that. So I create a very simple application. I presume that we send a post application, and we have already the authentication. So the topic of this video is not about authentication. So I would say which page, for example, we say authorized service. Let's say we have such a service here, JWT, and then of course again this pair of information, because we want to send a token by post request, so I use post here. Request and response. So now I want to define, I want to grab basically some information. For example, I say we don't need to, we have already designed our authentication series, but you can actually do this by your own. It's not the point here. We have like user email variable, and this variable wants to be filled out by the information in the receiving packet from the clients, and I'm sorry here, and what do we get? User email, right? Then I define another variable which call like user, and I say I want to get this in a JSON data name coming from user email. Then I'm gonna to basically sign my token to this user. So I say access token equal JWT and this method here, and user need to be assigned with the token, the secret token here. So this is how we can actually extract the token from env file. And what was the name again? The name was secret key, but secret key now is empty, so we need to fill it out. Alright, and afterwards we want to send this as a JSON packet to the client browser. Okay, so access token, okay, so it should be fine, but there is one thing left, which is the key. And this key, as I stated earlier, it has to be complex. It shouldn't be easy, because if it's easy, somebody can crack that and reconstruct the packet. So how we make basically or come across with secure and complex and unique keys. So to do that, we can, one of the approaches like this, require crypto, we want to get some random bytes, and it's 64 is our len. Okay, and we want to convert that to a string, and we want to get the hexadecimal of that. But you are free to use different approaches. You can simply type something. You don't have to use this, but this basically generates some secure, give us some sort of security to some extent. If you, each time you execute that, you get different random bytes. So I would copy this one. Okay. So let's see, does our service work out or not? So we need to comment this one, say this time we have like a post request, and we want to send it to the same address, but different routes. And we want to also send this basically user email to the server side. So we want to send as a JSON content, JSON packet. So we said content type has to be JSON, and easily specify that like that, and say we have like, we would say something like this. You can of course add other fields like balance here, but it's not necessary, but I just want to do that too because it sounds more natural. Okay, now I'm gonna send that. Okay, there is an issue here. What's the issue? I'm not sure whether I save it here or not. Okay, yeah, sorry, it was just a typo, a small typo, it was case sensitive. So as you can see, it works pretty much clearly, easily, and here is our token. And so there we go. So you see in this tutorial how we can how basically we create a simple app and we use environment, we use Unicode, and we generate JWT token, and we assign that to the user, read the user information here. Of course, we need some authentication, and this is the authorization part. This is afterwards, basically. So I hope you understand the concept here, and of course, you can work around the project. I would suggest you you go here and make a, we have the new Node app here. You can add other fields. You can basically make this authentication part and put this authorization for afterwards. And you can actually add like expiration time to the token. As I told you, this is for the sake of security. And check the expiration time at the time of receiving any token to make sure everything is fine. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you like this video, please like this and subscribe to my channel. It helps me a lot. If you have any question, you can either drop me an email or you can write your comments down below. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice time.